Welcome to the Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Krieger. Todd has over 35 years of experience working with thousands of couples as a licensed therapist in his private practice. Todd shares his insights on this show. It's never too early to divorce-proof your marriage or too late to heal yourselves and have the relationship you truly want.
Hi, everybody. Today, I am talking about when your gut knows, but they tell you wrong. Gaslighting is something that I've talked about before, and I'll be talking about again. It's very important. I see a lot of people that learn how to distrust themselves, their own gut feel. So when your gut knows something's wrong or right, but your partner is constantly, and we'll talk about how they do that, evoking you a sense of you're wrong, that is a form of abuse. Sometimes the partner that's gaslighting is doing it very strategically and very consciously. Sometimes it's very unconscious and self-protective. But in any event, the person who is a victim of the gaslighting begins to doubt themselves. So if you are experiencing the sense of what's wrong with me, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm the one that's the problem. When you begin to distrust this stuff that's going on in your body, know that there may be a problem and it isn't. That maybe you're one of those people that want to make relationships work. You want to keep families intact so much that there's a party that really wants to or needs to see the other person as healthy, as safe. The problem is if your partner isn't healthy and isn't safe, and you keep looking at them and treating them like they are, then you end up having more damage. And actually, if you have children, they have damage too. Because the best thing you can do for you and your children, if you have children, is to be a person that has self-esteem. And the most important aspect of self-esteem is listening to yourself, listening to your own heart. I have worked with countless number of people, men, women, all genders, where they were victims of gaslighting and they left the relationship. We'll talk about sometimes those relationships can be healed without leaving, but they would leave the relationship, maybe take too long to leave the relationship, but eventually they would leave the relationship because the gaslighting person is not willing to take any responsibility for themselves and their part in the problem and all that. And they will say to me, my God, it never was me. It never was me. God, it felt like me. When I was with her or when I was with him, it really felt, that person really did a good job of making me feel like it's me. I'm the problem. And so I would go around constantly covering up for my partner, constantly lying, even to my children or other people about my partner, just wanting them to see him or her in a good light. But I lost myself in that process. And now, without that person, or maybe they're in another relationship with someone who's healthier, who has the capacity to take responsibility, they go, oh my God, this is what feeling safe feels like. This is what it feels like to just express myself and not feel like I'm walking in a minefield all the time. If I make one false step, it blows up. If you are in a relationship where it feels that way, that if you take one false step, it blows up, you're probably in a gaslighting situation, meaning your partner is not able to regulate their own emotions well, cannot own their own parts of the problem, and so you get blamed for it. This happens all the time in life, both in a micro way and a macro way. Micro way meaning like within couples and families, family members or spouses end up becoming on the receiving end of the parts of that person that they can't deal with. So they blame you and they project you. In a macro way, that's kind of racism. Is part of what causes racism is an inability for the person who is being racist to not own their own stuff. So they can project any negative that they feel about themselves onto the marginalized population. But to focus back on the couples that I work with and families, that when you are feeling like you're never enough, when you're feeling that you're being marginalized, that you need to be invisible in order to not be in harm's way, you are probably a victim of gaslighting. And you need to do the first thing you need to do, even if your partner is isolated you, which a lot of gaslighters do, is find somebody, whether it's in your friend life, in your family life, a professional therapist such as myself, that you can talk to so that they can help you get your perspective and get reconnected with your intuition and gut. The price you pay for keeping a relationship stabilized in that kind of toxic stability is enormous to your emotional and physical well-being, as well as well-being of other family members, children, etc. Now, there are relationships that I've worked with where there's been gaslighting and the relationship heals. How? Well, my job is to help the victim of the gaslighting to recognize that they're victims and that they need to be aware of it and then begin to disengage from their habit of trying to make everything nice when it's not nice. My job with the person who is doing the gaslighting is to help them begin to face whatever it is that they're running from that leads to their gaslighting. That whatever they're trying to cope with, we got to face what it is they're really dealing with. Their shame, their childhood trauma, their own sense of feeling of inadequacy. It can be really painful. I had a couple of many years ago come to see me, and he comes in and he says, I'll use the word effing because I'm on video, but he didn't say effing. He said the actual word. But he comes in with his wife. He goes, effing young punk therapist. I was probably 20 years younger than I am now. He's probably my age now. Effing punk young therapist. You're going to tell me how to have a better marriage? You're going to tell me how to lead a life? Go F yourself. That was the first greeting. And I started to feel intimidated. And I'm human. I felt intimidated, but I was very aware of this gaslighting. Back in those days, the word gaslighting wasn't used as much as it is now. There are other terms like projective identification. I'll educate you on that. Projective identification is when a person, the gaslighter, doesn't own something inside of themselves. So they project it onto you. And then that's the projection part. But the identification is then you act it out or feel it or both. So you feel what the other person doesn't or isn't willing to or able to feel inside of them. So it's like it's not your stuff. It's their stuff. That's how it is sometimes. We got to figure out what's mine and what's yours. Well, I don't usually get intimidated, even when people are angry at me. What's going on here? I'm thinking, I bet there's some projective identification going on. So I said to her first, wow, I feel really intimidated. I saw the smirk on his face when I said that. And I said to her, do you feel intimidated about him? She goes, like all the time. And a lot of other people do too. So I said to him, there's this kind of psychological concept called projective identification. So, effing punk therapist not going to use fancy words. I go, yeah, I am right now this time. I said, but I'm feeling intimidated. But what projective identification oftentimes teaches us is that the person who feels the intimidation is actually feeling what the other person's not wanting to feel inside of themselves. Then maybe there's something you feel and you go around doing that. So if that's the case, who the F, I didn't say that either, I said the real word, who the F intimidated you? Oh, now is where this effing punk young therapist starts to therapize me. I go, that's my job. So I'm going to say it again. Who the F intimidated you? Oh, so this is what I'm supposed to tell you about my father and how he abused me pretty much from the day I was born. This would be the time. Now that guy was gaslighting the heck out of his wife. Didn't work with me because I recognized my own feelings and But it's much harder when you're a spouse. And she walked around in her life like she was in a minefield, constantly with self-doubt, and it was affecting her physical and emotional well-being. This became a very successful situation. He did learn to respect me, and I didn't buy any of his stuff, and we got past his self-protective mechanisms, and he began to own it. And then when he didn't, I would just call him on it. I would just keep calling him on it, and it was good. And then I'd say about 10 years later, 8 years, maybe 8 years later, I ran into her just on a fluke. And I said, how's everything? He said, oh, Todd, what you did was so helpful. He never, ever would ever admit and give you credit, that it was you. But he's like a teddy bear now. So this is a person who gaslighted all the time. He made everybody around him feel like they were stupid or bad or not good enough. But it was really his own feelings of unworthiness, his own lack of self-esteem that he got from a very critical, abusive father that he acted out on other people. That's what gaslighters do. So he was saying, I didn't know how it was going to go in that first session and beyond, but he was willing to, with the right help, see the stuff and see what that was a defense mechanism and that he was impacting other people. And in his case, I don't really believe deep down he was a malicious man. Some gaslighters are. Yeah, but I don't believe in his case he was, but he was hurting people. His friendship suffered, everything, which I heard all got much better, everything. But his marriage definitely got way better. So it can happen. It can happen. But in the therapy, of course, my job is to help her get in touch with her own gut. Man, I'm always been okay. I am okay. He made me feel that way, but really I was just getting sucked into that projection on him. And that's what gaslighters do, to avoid their pain. So if you can relate to this, or other couples where they're going through this, or a person that's going through this, an individual, then share this video with them. Because I think it's very important. I think it's very important for people to understand that this goes on, it's common, and it's hurtful, and that you can get liberated from it, whether you leave the relationship or, in some cases, like the one I talked to you, that you stay in that relationship. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Trust your gut. Your gut is not wrong. If there's something wrong, probably is something wrong. And follow it and reach out, whether it's a therapist, like I said, like myself, or somebody that you could trust, even if you've been brainwashed to think that you got to keep everything private. That's not necessarily the case. It isn't the case when you're dealing with someone like that. Thanks for listening. This is Todd Krieger, making the world safe for love.
That's it for today's episode of Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Krieger. For free resources and materials, head over to toddkrieger.com. Loved this episode? Head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.